Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am thankful. Thankful that you have allowed me into your personal space for 80 times over this past year. And thankful to the listeners that have made this podcast global in 100 countries. Cruising is loved throughout the world. And I am so appreciative of our guests who make it possible for me to attract you, the listeners. I only wish I could have included all 80 guests in this show. We premiered a year ago with Sheri of Cruise Tips TV, followed by Ilana of Life Well Cruised. I knew early on who I wanted to start the podcast with. Both are friends. Sheri and Cruise Tips TV was in both The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted and did my first video ad for The Joy of Cruising. So in the first clip, I wanted to honor her and say thank you by playing the first words of a guest on the show. Ilana in Life Well Cruised was in Cruising Interrupted. She was also in the first clip, and I wanted to honor her and say thank you by sharing the first of many of the most memorable, funniest, and even most embarrassing moments in this one-year-old birthday celebration.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's a joy to be here, and congratulations on your podcast. I was so thrilled to hear that The Joy of Cruising was going to be going to the podcast world. This is the best thing ever.
Who would have guessed Sheri is a former library nerd? Seriously, Sheri has a calming demeanor, and I'm so glad I opened the Joy of Cruising podcast with her as a guest. Besides being a cruise community star, her bearing made her a perfect first guest for this somewhat anxious podcast host. Thanks again, Sheri and Cruise Tips TV. Next week, Ilana of Life Well Cruised.
Has it ever happened to you that you nod off a little bit when you're in a show? You know, you kind of get a little bit tired at nighttime. Anyway, it happens to me. And my family, if we are seeing a comedian, they're usually poking me at the side because they're like, he's going to call on you. And it just, I don't know if it's the rocking, you know, by the time like the ship is sailing, because normally at home, I go to sleep around midnight every night. I stay up late, but on a cruise ship, you put me in a theater seat and I start to nod off. In any case, so we were on a Norwegian cruise in the month of September. We saw an incredibly funny comedian. I loved him. I was following the show, but I guess I nodded off at one point and he called on me to be along with there. And my son was hysterical. You know, he started to videotape me. But in any case, what I had to do, it was a comedian / clown sort of show, juggler. His name is Dave Rave. And he called on me to throw a pin, like he was juggling pins, to throw it not at him, but so that he could catch it on the stage. Well, my son was hysterical because I am known for having the worst throw. The worst. Like, I cannot throw for anything. I cannot play any games with any balls, not bowling, not volleyball, nothing. I am really, really bad. So I threw the pin and he had to duck because I just felt him in the head. And
finally, I share my most embarrassing moment. I am sure I butcher the Queen's English from time to time, and in my very first show, that's right, the one with Sheri, my phone rings, and I discovered it well after the episode was released. My most embarrassing moment was when I was a guest on a podcast which shall remain nameless. I made a boo-boo, apologized to the host, and completed an otherwise very nice conversation. Of course, my expectation is the host would edit out my boo-boo and apology. Nope. racial aspect of the book was it was written by.
Now connected to Paul's iPad Air.
I have been fortunate to interview several stand-up comedians over the years. You never know when they're going to drop a comment that is clever, witty, or even hilarious. That was the case when I had star comic George Solano, who performs on Carnival, on the podcast in September. He had been serious and normal to this point, and then he caught me unaware.
Well, I'm originally Colombian. My mother, I'm American on my mom's side and Colombian on my dad's best friend's side. So
I'm on lag time, but I just got that. Billy D. Washington, another star Carnival comedian, was on in March. He just answered my question, but it was a hilarious scenario he painted. What is your most memorable or most outlandish or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
So Carnival used to have a cruise. I don't even know if they do it anymore. That it would overnight in Nassau, Bahamas, right? And so what we do typically is we don't stay on the whole cruise. We fly into the middle of the cruise. We work the end of the cruise. We stay on, work the beginning of the next cruise, and then we get off at a port in the middle. Did I make that clear?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to meet the cruise on its third day in Nassau, and it's overnighting in Nassau. Well, everything was screwed up about my flights that day, so I got in like really late. Had an 8:00 show that night. I found out when I got there. I got there around 7:15. So you know we do R and PG shows on Carnival, right? So I got to do R and PG. So everybody's out in Nassau because they out on the night, not in town. But still, I get in the show and I got maybe 50 people in there. I rush, don't even take a shower. Just kind of wipe off, change clothes, go down, do my show. So you know me, like you've seen what I do. I like to get people's attention immediately. So I get in. I assume because every time I'm on the cruise ship, my first show is always an R-rated show. Always. You already know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I assume that it's always an R-rated show. So I get down, or an adult show, because all my shows aren't R-rated. They're just, adult. I get down there. I go in hard at the beginning. I get the most polarizing response from this audience. Some people are falling out laughing. Other people are looking at me in shock. And I'm going, what is going on? So I see my comedy club host on the side of me, and she's gesturing, and I don't know what she's doing. She's waving her arms. I'm like, what is going on? And I don't even ask her, whatever. And so I continue with the set, and then she goes to the other side of the room. And finally I go, her name was Emily. I never forget this. Her name was Emily. I go, Emily, I stopped my set and I go, what's going on? She's like, Billy, this is a PG show. Bro, and when she says it's a PG show, my automatic response was, oh shit. And I go, oh. And then after that, I say the F word, just as a response to a response. Man, I spent that next 20 minutes apologizing to this crowd. I waited at the door and apologized to them again. And to a man, each one of them said, we knew it was something. I told them exactly what had happened.
Wow. Imagine how Billy D must have felt. I've seen enough of his videos, though, and I'm sure he handled it with poise and self-assuredness. But most of my guests are not professional. They don't handle embarrassing situations with aplomb, and several of them have a common problem: going to the wrong cabin. Listen to 3 progressively worse scenarios. First, Marcus of the brand Sparks from his appearance in May. Cruise Monkeys from October, they do like their drink. And Roland and Emma from December. Talk about a bad scene.
I had popped up to a bar to go get a drink, and I was coming back to the room so I could enjoy the drink whilst getting ready for dinner at sunset. Bliss, wonderful, sounds amazing. So I walked up to the room, and it just so happens that there was a stateroom attendant there, and my hands were full. So he helpfully let me into the room. I walked straight into the middle of the room. And then I realized that wasn't my room. It was in someone else's cabin, and they were there as well. So they were just chilling out on the sofa. One was having a nap.
Sorry, Pino Ventura, and we'd had a few to drink, and we went all the way down. At the end of the night, you're bumbling down the corridor, and we get to our room, and we're there putting the key against the door. I'm going, the card's not working. The card's not working. Because you're worried it's demagnetized, because it happens. And you're going, this
on the door, then trying to open the door
and drunk, and you're falling all over the place. So then I goes, give me your card, give me your card. So we're trying the card in and out, nothing. All of a sudden, I looked up at the wall, and I could see the room number, and I just laughed. And you were going, what's so funny? And I said, we're on the wrong deck. We're in the right room, but like literally about 2 or 3 decks different to where we should have been. I don't know what had happened. We must have just got out of the wrong level or something.
But we moved away from that room very quickly in case we'd woken up the
poor people in it must have. If I was in there, you'd have been petrified. But that was probably one of the most embarrassing and dope.
I'm sure we've done it a couple of times.
It could have been a lot worse.
Could have been.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky. A footballer was not in that room.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about American football or UK football, you're lucky both ways.
Yeah.
That could have been a bad scene.
Yeah. We do like our drink, and
if anybody who's watched our vlogs will know, we do end the night quite tipsy sometimes.
Yeah,
so
quite tipsy. Yeah.
I have one of those, and it happened just recently. As I mentioned, I'm visually impaired, so I put signs on the door so that I can identify our door, our cabin easily. And this was the last night, so we had taken the sign down, and I am looking at the rooms, getting really close, and I get really close to this door, and the lady opens the door, and she was completely naked. And she thought it was her husband, and I'm like... I told my husband to come.
I don't think you can beat that one, Rose. Well, you could need it. If it was you at the door, that would need it. But
no, I have a couple interesting ones. One is we was on the Holland cruise, the Holland cruise, and the median age was like what 70.
Holland America Lines. Okay.
Yeah, Holland America. So we were in was it a club? Or was it just
we were like in a little club dancing? Yeah,
just a club, and the old ladies were hawking me. They were on me. They were asking her.
Like one lady sat next to me and goes, "Is that your husband, honey?" And I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." He's like, "Oh, you're hot. You did a good job." And I'm like, "Okay."
Those are all close calls. These next ones go beyond close calls, and each involve UK gentlemen in various stages of undress. I'll stop there. Listen for yourself. First, from our most popular episode ever, Cruise with Ben and David, who were on in August. Then, Travel Blog Jamie from October. And then, finally, Chipmunk from September.
I think my most embarrassing would probably be on our second cruise. So it was on the P&O Britannia cruise, and we'd just got on. We'd not done any cruises before. We'd only done the one, so we weren't that experienced. We'd got a balcony. We pulled into port. I think it was St. Martin. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be nice. We slept well after our long flight the day before. Just got out of bed, only had my boxer shorts on, ripped the curtains opened the balcony, and just stood on the balcony, and there was about 150 people on a carnival ship, about 3 meters away, just looking at me and laughing. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember just like running back in the cabin, slamming the door shut, closing the curtains. And I was like, oh gosh, I didn't realize cruise ships parked so close.
That's actually an easy one. It's etched in my memory. I woke up on my alarm to watch the sail into San Francisco. I ran out onto my balcony. There's the Golden Gate Bridge coming up. I start crying my eyes out. I cry at everything these days. And then I realized I wasn't wearing anything.
Wait. You got to back up.
I mean, I woke up on my alarm. I was really worried that I was going to miss the sail into San Fran. I ran out onto the balcony. I cried because there we are coming in to the bay, and I didn't realize I wasn't wearing anything.
That's a great funniest, most embarrassing, and memorable all in one.
And disturbing as well.
And there was the chance to go on a banana boat, mainly younger people, mainly female. This speedboat took us out into the ocean near the ship, and of course, inevitably, the blooming thing capsized. So everyone else managed to get back onto the banana boat without trouble. I was left as the final person trying to get on. I had one handle to grab onto. The current was dragging me under. So, and these young people were kind of, saying, "Well, can we help?" And I said, "No worries. I'll swim over to the speedboat." So, which I did that. When I got to the speedboat, they looked at me like I'd kind of fallen out of the sky. And I said, "Well, don't you have a rope or a handle or a ladder or something I can use to get back on the boat?" All they could find was this rope with no handle or anything on the end, just a rope. So I wound it around my wrist, and they started putting us back to shore. So on one line was the banana boat, on the other line was me being dragged along through the water. And of course, they wanted to get back fairly quickly, so they're going fairly fast. Now, unfortunately, I was face down in the water, and the water was going up into my mouth and up my nostrils and everything. So I thought, this isn't a great idea. So I flipped over onto my back, which was fine, except I suddenly realized that the speed of the boat and the strength of the current was dragging down my rather baggy trunks that I was wearing. So I had to then use my other hand to hold on to my trunks for grim life. It was mainly women on this banana boat, and they were shouting at me and saying, "Wave if you're okay." Well, I didn't dare wave, come wading out of the sea naked. And as we got near the coast, thankfully they launched a rescue boat, but much too late in the day. And I managed still by now my wrist was quite cut by this rope because I've been dragged all this way, but I managed to wade out onto the shoreline to a round of applause from everyone standing watching it go on. So thank God I managed to keep the trunks on. That was one of my most memorable, but rather embarrassing.
Dave, as I was writing your feature, I'm sitting in a room typing, and my wife could just hear me laughing out loud. That was a laugh out loud moment. Now, UK men are not the only ones with various stages of undress. US men too, and US men seem to have a bodily fluids issue. George Solano, John Armstrong from The Magic of Cruising in January, and Cruise Life Matt in July shares their story.
My embarrassing thing was introducing the captain, and my tuxedo was a bit too big, and while I'm introducing the senior officers, my pants just fell down.
I went out and they had me performing on these cruises that would go out to like the 3 Mile point and do donuts in the ocean and be a casino and then come back. And I had not really been on ships before, and so I ate food, which was not a great idea. And then I got really seasick, and then I had to do my show. And then during my show, while I was on stage, I let's just say did not have much control of my functions while I was on stage. And I did some, as they call in the business, a protein spill while I was performing, and did not go over very well, and might have also damaged my clothing in other ways, also internally, just because I was not very used to that. And again, I was in my 20s. I'm 47 now, was a long time ago. And so it's quite embarrassing, to say the very least, that I was on stage and trying to manage my show while I was holding back my vomit, for lack of a better term. And so that was quite the quite the harrowing experience, but way in the past.
I say out of nowhere. I should have known better. Out of nowhere, I have the urge, like, I'm gonna vomit. And it's like one of those ones where, like, you immediately know that you do not have time to get anywhere. And so I grab my shirt. I keep as much as I can in my shirt as I'm running. I say running, walking fast to the bathroom. And I literally just throw out my shirt in the trash. And I still, to this day, I don't know that anybody noticed. It was like that time, like right before dinner, where people are kind of headed in, going to get ready for the night. And, there's some people out on the deck, but I don't know that anybody actually noticed me, like, just straight up vomit right on the pool deck.
Various stages of undress is different for different generations. However, this turned out to Nancy and Dale Houchin's benefit in a cruise contest. They were on the show titled Living on Cruise Ships in August.
Ecstasy.
The ecstasy.
And let me tell you, that was
Carnival
fitting.
Ecstasy. And so that was like maybe our second, it was October of 92. Maybe my second or second cruise or something. Anyway, I hadn't been on very many, so I didn't really know. Weren't very cruise smart and didn't know what was going on or whatever. But we got on the ship. There were all these young kids there. We were in our 40s, 50s, whatever, So we were a whole lot older than everybody else hanging around the pool. But they were doing this ping pong ball game, and you jumped in the pool and you had to stuff ping pong balls down each other's bathing suits or pants or tops or whatever.
And let me preface, this was before they put, things were sort of, you couldn't do things this. Now they do this.
Everything's politically correct.
Yeah.
Back then it was not politically correct.
You literally stuffed.
I
stuffed in him and he stuffed in me. Now when they do that. Well, they do that still on Journey Cruises on Carnival, but they put a T-shirt on. But let him finish telling you.
So anyway, all these little young jock guys were in there with their little skimpy little bathing suits, and the little girls, they had their little skimpy little bikinis on, and so there's not much material in either one of them to stuff ping pong balls in. Well, I had a pair of shorts on and a pair of regular underwear on.
I had a one-piece bathing suit.
A one-piece bathing suit. Okay, so I had a lot of material that would hold the ping pong balls. So she said, well, let's do it. So we jumped in the pool, and I'm at that point, not today probably, but at that point I was up for anything. So she started stuffing ping pong balls in my pants. Well, my underwear held them in. Well, the other people, they would stuff them in their little bathing suit. Well, they'd come out the bottom of the leg. Well, mine stayed in. So I looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man,
He looked very well endowed.
Yeah.
I say.
So we won that. So that was probably, and it was a little embarrassing getting out with 200 ping pong balls stuffed down your. The Michelin Man didn't have anything on me,
Yeah, and mine was stuffed very well because he was stuffing them down me, but I looked like I was pregnant. And the CD really made it because he kept saying, boy, this man has a lot of balls, and he was making it funny. It was good.
Yeah. Sometimes I find the story that a guest tells me to be really funny, even hilarious, and I haven't yet gotten to my funny or embarrassing segment of the interview yet. Like this one, from the legendary Manny Keough in March, a Grammy-winning drummer for Billy Preston, Graham Central Station, and yes, Ray Charles.
One weekend playing there, and his drummer got sick somehow. And who else was there to play the drum chair but yours truly? That's how that came about. And I was 17 years old at that time. I learned a lot from Ray Charles in about 5 minutes' time. I used to have my cymbals and everything up in the air and jump up and hit the cymbals and play drum rolls where they wasn't supposed to be. Well, I thought they were fine. But Ray Charles turned around and looked at him and said, wait a minute, baby. Hold on now. So immediately, I just calmed down. He said, wait a minute, darling. I settled down, and he just kind of whispered at me, said, see me in the dressing room, baby. And at the end of the night, I went to his dressing room and said, yes, sir, Mr. Charles, how you doing? He said, I'm doing fine, darling. But then I'm not doing so good, And then he told me at that point, he said, your name is not on the marquee, son. He said, nobody here to see you. He said, but one day your name is going to be on the marquee. And when it is on the marquee, you shoot your arrow and get out the way. That's all he had to tell me. That has stood with me for the last 60 years. From that 5 minutes. By the time he changed his shirt, I grew up from being a boy to a man as a drummer, professional.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful story. And you sound just like Ray Charles.
I was around him enough.
Here's another unexpected gem when interviewing Jennifer Danielle in June about Virgin Voyages.
The Mexican restaurant on board, they have a drink.
Oh, pink agave.
Yeah, I can't believe I can't think of it because that was one of my favorites. They have a drink with crickets in it. And so probably if I were by myself, I may do it for video footage, but definitely doing that as a group was a good time.
Well, I saw you and I said, no, she's not going to eat that cricket. And you sure did.
I did. Just one, though. Just one. I've been chirping ever since.
Here's a comment from Addie and Terry that I found funny in its irony. So you talked about what you have booked. What's on your bucket list?
Okay, so we are big fans of the top 50 bars in the world. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of been, and our son just pointed this out to us. He's like, you travel to go to bars. But we have been able to visit quite a few on the top 50 list.
When I ask about funniest, most embarrassing, most memorable, some choose to talk about their most memorable event on a cruise. Those memories often involve love and joy. What can be more memorable than that from Life of Iris in November?
Okay, so probably I'm going to say the most memorable. There's a lot of memories around the world, but I got engaged in Bora Bora. So my husband and I were both working on board, and we managed to get most of the day off. And so we went ashore in Bora Bora, and we had lunch at this lovely restaurant, and then we were going swimming on the beach. And that's when he asked me to marry him. And then, so Bora Bora, I don't know. It's obviously memorable just because it's where one of the biggest things in my life happened. So
Or this from Jason of Popular Cruising back in October.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I would have to say sailing with my wife for the first time was pretty special. Before we got married, even, we went on the Disney Dream. Mm-hmm. And she was already a fan of cruising, which was helpful for me to, I didn't have to introduce her to it and get her in on it. She was already very much sold on the form of travel, thankfully. And so we went on that, and actually, come to think of it, the Disney Dream video that I did from that ship is my most viewed at 1.7 million just for that video.
Wow.
So.
And another proposal. This one from Sail Away with Dan and Jay.
Tonight, and he's like, no, let's dress up. I'm like, okay, twist.
Finally managed to get him ready, and while he was getting ready, I was setting up on the balcony. I got the champagne ready, I got his engagement ring on the table and ready, and everything like that. All set and ready, and Danny's a bit clumsy, and yeah. He comes onto the balcony. I pop the question, and out of sheer excitement,
he
knocks over the champagne,
Knocks over-
flutes,
knocks over the flutes.
everything smashes. The whole thing on the balcony. So there's me in tears, like I'm so excited, but trying to pick up shards of glass at the same time.
And yeah, that was just that's.
It was just me. It was us.
Yeah,
it was a moment. But that's probably the most memorable.
That is very romantic, and congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to most embarrassing. This one from multiple best-selling author Joanna Nell, just on the podcast, who at the time was an officer on a apprenticeship. Joanna was the ship doctor. She got caught in just a little lie.
But back then, look, crew parties were a thing. We had an officer's wardroom, and there would be themed parties, whatever was going around. But I remember telling a little white lie to the table that I was entertaining one night, and saying that sending a message saying I wouldn't be able to come to the table that night because I had a medical emergency. And I was caught in an elevator. The doors opened of the elevator. I was carrying a case of beer going down to one of the alleyway parties. And there were my entire table waiting to get to the elevator. And they just looked hard and went, oh, a medical emergency. I must never live that down. I just thought that'll just teach me.
Of course, there is no way I could have a funniest moment without including Paul and Carol Loves to Travel. They've been in 2 of my books because every time I see a photo or video of them, they just exude fun. They were on the podcast in June.
Well, mine's quite an easy one, which Carol just keeps reliving on social media. We did a cruise last year called Electric Sunsets, which is like it's like a music festival but on a cruise ship. And last year the 2 eras were the 90s and the O's. And one of the nights you had to dress up as a 90s icon. So I went as Britney Spears.
I've actually seen a picture of that, and I might use that picture to promote this episode, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no problem. We can say
Dear.
yeah, it is a bit scary.
So my pain can live on.
Addie and Terry. Oh, what a fun couple. Addie's most embarrassing moment was funny enough. Then Terry, who I called the man with the golden voice, and you can hear the backstory on that on their episode, told a story about being late returning from an excursion.
Oh, mine is easy. And they would say it's funny. It's embarrassing for me. But we were on the Independence of the Seas and we were in the ice skating rink. And being a Minnesotan, I was explaining to them that in school, you have to learn how to ice skate. And so, as he starts giggling.
Terry's giving away. Something's coming.
So I'm telling my daughter and Terry that I know how to ice skate and that you have to learn this in school. It's a thing. And so I'm putting on the ice skates or putting on the helmets and we're doing all the safety things. And then we get out on the ice and I'm trying to turn around. Mind you, I haven't ice skated in years, but I'm trying to turn around so I can skate backwards to kind of lead my daughter because this is her first time on ice skates. And as I'm turning, I slip and I fall and I bang my head astronomically hard.
She was on the ice for all of 5 seconds. Literally walked out, and that was it.
That was it.
Meanwhile, me and my daughter are rolling around.
So ice rink, and I'm sitting there with an ice pack on my head with a concussion, and they are dying laughing. And so that was my embarrassing.
This was the Olympic skater that was going to show us.
What's the social media saying? Photos or it didn't happen?
Yes, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I got the photo.
How about you? How about you, Terry? most.
It would probably be
you falling flat on your face like Aggie.
No. To me, this one is funny, and I got a friend who would think it's amazing. It was on the MSC Meraviglia. I had just taken a good coworker of mine and his wife. They were cruising with us, and we took them when we got to Cozumel. We always get on the ferry and go to Playa del Carmen to the mainland. So we're over there. We're having a great time. Great time.
Lots of tequila was invited.
And then I look at the watch, and I'm like, "Oh shoot, we got to catch the ferry back."
Or we'll be
don't tell me you were a pier runner.
No, we
not to the pier.
Not to the pier.
But to the ferry.
So we sent them ahead, but meanwhile, we're still trying to find some reposado and stuff. So we're shopping. So we send them ahead, and I'm looking at the watch like, yo.
We got like
and I'm thinking to myself, well, I got a little extra money put away. So if I got to meet them at the next port, we should be okay. But my friend was like, no, we got to go. So to see both of us running at top speed through Playa del Carmen, trying to get to the ferry,
holding bags.
It's amazing.
And
we finally get there thinking we're gonna miss it because they're starting to pull stuff away. And we finally get on, and we're just huffing and puffing, sweats everywhere. Everybody's looking at us laughing. The dude is on there like, "You okay? You okay?" We're just like, so that to me, whenever we see that or whatever we think of Playa, it is immediate a fun time because we almost didn't make it back to the ship. And when the thing was, we had like 45 minutes once we got back to Cozumel before the ship left.
The last ferry.
That was the last ferry
from Playa back to Cozumel.
Yeah.
So if we would have missed that one, it would have been a very
us, the cruise specialists, almost made a cruise boo-boo. So that was a funny thing to me.
But the story doesn't end there. The cruise specialists did, in fact, once make a huge boo-boo. Terry may not have been a pier runner on that trip, but something much, much worse happened on another trip. I listened in stunned silence, couldn't laugh, and even was apologetic. I asked. But then Terry gave me a huge laugh. Well, at least you can talk about it. If you had truly missed the ship, I don't know if you'd want to even bring that up.
We've had that before as a family.
Get out!
Where we, it was one of those deals where we were going to fly in the day of sailing, and
you're one of those, huh?
Yeah. Not anymore. Where it was a family trip for Thanksgiving, and we missed our flight like seconds before the gate. They closed the gate. And we arrived to the gate and they're like, nope, sorry. And then if we would have left then and just gotten in the car and driven, we would have been okay. But they told us that they could put us on the next flight for standby. And we tried that 3 times. So we ended up missing the entire cruise.
Oh my goodness.
It was a very silent Thanksgiving.
That was a very big financial hit at the time. And I didn't speak to my family for about a week and a half.
Yeah, it was a very silent Thanksgiving. Because that was also why we also now always get travel insurance, and we always travel the day before just to
negate any of those worries.
Man, I hurt just listening to that.
That was a hard.
That was hard
lesson to learn.
Because, like I said, a family of 5, and the kids had their own cabin. We had a cabin. We had drink packages. We had excursions. It was going to be a great family vacation.
It was quite a bit down the drain. Quite a bit.
Well, I'm kind of sorry I asked about that.
We laugh about it now.
No, we don't.
The winner for most wonderful cruise moment was easily Cruise Lifestyle from their episode in September. I'll let Laura tell you about it, but when you get a minute, go to her YouTube channel or to my Facebook group, as there is a video of her reaction in real time. And it is priceless. Pure, absolute joy.
Well, I was contacted by Princess and they said, would you like to be the first passengers on board? And I said, yes, please. So we were able to be the first passengers to step back on board Sky Princess. I think it had been laid up for 19 months or something. And so, yeah, we had the honor of being the first passengers to step on board. And we got on board and walked straight into the atrium, and there was all these crew members all surrounding, all looking over all the different decks down onto the atrium, and they had banners and waving flags, and it was just a wonderful moment. It would have been wonderful enough just to have been on the cruise, but to have had that reception and to be greeted in that way was just unforgettable.
Did they? Was there anything special during the cruise on your behalf?
Yeah. So the other thing that we found out when we got to the cruise terminal was that we had been upgraded, which again was a really lovely bonus. Yes. What they upgraded us to was like mind-blowing. So on Sky Princess and all the Royal class ships after Sky Princess, they have Sky Suites, which are 2 huge suites at the very top of the ship, and it overlooks the Lido deck, and it has apparently the biggest balcony at sea, like the longest continual balcony at sea. So there's 2 of these on board. So yeah, we had a very big surprise when we got to the cruise terminal.
You are so matter-of-factly about it. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah. It's just one of those moments that is just I'm never going to top it. It's never going to get better than that. But I will always have that to look back on and think, wow, that was just. Yeah, we were just speechless when we found out.
You've got a story to share for years.
Yes.
Knowing me, I'd have written a book about it. It's a 2-way tie for the most poignant moment. Chris Beeler tells a story about the most moving photo in the Joy of Cruising books, which you've seen in promos from her stirring October episode, Drama on the High Seas. Then, Life of Iris, who already had her life upended by the pandemic while on a world cruise, sees her life upended again.
Heading for Florida, he said, we're just heading for Florida now. And that's when I was out in the back of the ship. And I was just watching Rio de Janeiro leave in the background. And I was alone there on the outside deck. And this man came out through the door, and he was so upset. He was pounding his chest and he's saying, Mia Rio. And that was his home. And now he was being denied the chance to go home, and he was headed to Florida. And so many of these people, they didn't have the visas necessary to go to Florida or to go to the States, or and everybody was planning on being home. And this poor man, just so close to his home, and I just left him alone. And then I looked through the porthole door as I left, and he had dropped down to his knees, just sobbing that his country wouldn't let him in.
Let me jump in, listeners. At this point, correct me if I get anything wrong, Chris. Chris took the most poignant photo that was in Cruising Interrupted, and there's over 100 photos in Cruising Interrupted, but this one was it was chilling, and you'll see. Or you will have seen by the time this airs, you will have seen when I promo this episode, you will have seen that photo. Do you know, Chris, whatever happened with that gentleman?
I saw him on board a few times, and he was always sad. I don't know what happened in the end, although I hear that after the rest of us got off in Florida, there were a few nationals. By this time, they had to get us on charter planes. So I heard that the South Americans were one of the last ones to get out. Whether it was because there were only a few of them that were going, or because the countries were not willing to let planes in, I don't know.
went out to sea, went for a few weeks in training. And then, so my few weeks at training was on a different ship than my husband. And then I was getting transferred to the same ship that he was on. And that ship we were going to be restarting. We were going to be bringing that ship back into service. And then a couple days before I was transferring ships, we found out that that ship was, instead of going back into regular service at that point, it was going to be used to house Ukrainian refugees for the summer. And so, so then
the world changed the second time.
World changed number 2. So then last summer, the ship that I was on was used. It was used as housing for Ukrainian refugees. So basically, we were kind of like the first stop, and all the efforts that were happening on board were very organized by the Dutch Salvation Army. I can't give them enough credit for everything that they did for these people during that time. But yeah, they would come on board, and the Salvation Army would work to find them housing, work to get them set up with jobs, help them just integrate into Dutch society with bank accounts, how to get health, and how to go to a doctor's appointment, with Dutch lessons, English lessons. We primarily had families that were children. And so organizing this for them, arts and crafts classes, different events in the city. And so we were kind of the base for things to get kind of organized until they could get housing elsewhere. Because we were only a temporary situation. It wasn't going to be that, anyone was going to be living on board for a year. The ship ended up being there for about 6 months. And we, on average, had about 1,500 people on board, 1,500 family members. And of those, about 500 were children.
For a little more perspective, I say the world changed, at least a part of the world. As you know, Russia invaded Ukraine with a blistering attack that led to the greatest refugee exodus since World War II.
But an incredible and, heartbreaking, but also uplifting experience, if that makes sense. Like, just devastating for the situation that they're going through, but then it showed you a lot of the resilience of the human spirit, and also the kindness of people in the world that exist too. So you're seeing the awful and the kindness at the same time in it. So
nothing will erase the 2 major events in Iris's cruise life. But subsequent to those, what can be more joyful to a still recent bride and groom? A nice ending for now to Iris's last few tumultuous years at sea. What are you doing now?
Now, life is all different. So during my last contract on board, I found out I was pregnant.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, and everything is going good so far. So far, baby's healthy, I'm healthy, everything's good. But
there you go. Well, now it is news to the world. Thank you. I am honored that you chose to break that news on the Joy of Cruising podcast. I feel special. So thank you. Do you watch the television show Dateline? Listen to this fun, embarrassing moment from Sometime Sailing from July.
Dan will explain, because he was the victim. I accidentally drugged him. I gave him the incorrect dosage of whatever the generic form of drowsy Dramamine is on Disney Cruise Line's Disney Dream, which was not on purpose. But we discovered that he does get seasick on large cruise ships. So ever since, we travel with our own anti-nausea solutions and remedies that we buy from Amazon. And of course, we have a blog post about it. And we also have Blisslets that are really cool, fashionable anti-nausea wristbands that we can't recommend enough. Also in that blog post. But I'll let Dan explain kind of what happened.
I discovered I get seasick on large format cruises, and like Mikhail said, we were on the Disney Dream, and two of the 3-day cruise was spent in bed sleeping because of the wrong dosage of anti-nausea medication. So that was funny, embarrassing, and memorable all at the same time.
Yes, I thought that when they sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just going to say, Dan said funny, embarrassing, and memorable, but the cruise wasn't so memorable because you only experienced a third of it.
Right.
Yeah, he saw, before we left Port Canaveral, he saw a little bit of Nassau, and then we were back at Port Canaveral to disembark. So what happened was they gave me 2 pills, and through miscommunication, I thought that the woman at the guest services told me to give him both of the pills because of his height. He's 6'2". But that was not the case. He probably should have actually had half of one, not 2. So a quarter of the dosage I gave him, but he lived, and it's over-the-counter medication. So all's well that ends well.
So he lived, but now the whole world knows about it.
Yeah, so I won't be on Dateline after all. Thank goodness.
I have long had a complicated relationship with helicopters. By complicated, I mean I don't mess with them. Neil from Cruise Ship Diaries in June had an eventful first contract as a videographer for Princess Cruises, including going to the Panama Canal each week. Here, he hilariously discusses doing a shoot for the first time from a helicopter. Laura, Cruise Lifestyle, returns for some ribbing about her and her boyfriend Craig paying extra money on their helicopter excursion. And then Steph of Sean and Steph, who was on the same cruise as us when we went to Hawaii and Alaska, discusses a wonderful helicopter excursion, and our conversion was complete. No longer a complicated relationship, just a matter of time.
The Panama Day get set up. You get up at about 4:30 in the morning, climb down the rope ladder, jump onto the pilot boat, and then this time, instead of getting taken to the canal, we get taken to an airfield, which looked like just a dingy warehouse in the middle of nowhere. And again, I tried not to drink as much the night before a Panama shoot. And so I get in a helicopter, and I'm still half asleep, to be honest. I'm not really with it. And it's only then it dawns. I look at a helicopter, and it's this little twin blade thing. And I thought it was like a mini toy one they put out front of the helicopter place to like advertise it. Oh, you can do helicopter tours here. I didn't realize that was our actual helicopter. The next issue we encountered was pilot doesn't speak a word of English because, obviously we're in Panama. So you've got a guy from England, a guy from Canada, and a guy from Panama, and none of us can communicate with the pilot. At least at least he knew what the job was. It was just to fly around the ship in circles. But yeah, the one thing Travis had, I thought he was joking, but no, there are no doors on this helicopter. So I have one little seatbelt around my waist, and that was it. And I'm just thinking, what? And I just couldn't even. I'd never been in a helicopter before in my life, and now I'm in one in a foreign country. The pilot doesn't speak a word of English, and there's no doors. So, and I think I had my eyes closed for maybe the first sort of 10 minutes of it. I just literally had the camera on the floor, pointed out the window. Pointed out the empty gap where the door should be, hit record, and just like Travis advised me, just keep the shot wide. And then once it kind of settled down, I was like, okay, I'm not, I kind of calmed down a little bit. Then I opened my eyes and kind of got into it. But as well, there's not really a lot you can do. It is like he told me, just keep the camera wide, just make sure it's recording. Obviously, make sure you're in focus, and the ship and the helicopter will do the work as it kind of circles the ship. He then took us in over Panama City, so suddenly we're flying in between all these skyscrapers, and that was amazing. And that was enough to bung on an extra DVD and, charge a little bit extra for. So the manager was happy, and the stuff came out quite well.
We went to Hawaii, and he fell in love with it as well. So that was good.
Now, Hawaii, was that the one where when I was promoting the Cruising Interrupted, I showed a picture of you and Craig, and I think the caption simply said, "Nope." It was a picture of you and Craig getting in a helicopter with no doors on it.
Yeah. The funny thing was, we paid extra for them to take the doors off.
You paid extra? that seems so. I mean, I'm not laughing at you, Laura, but it seems kind of counterintuitive. But you
Exactly.
wanted the full deal.
Yeah, we wanted to feel the heat because it was going over volcanoes.
Yeah.
So we got to experience that. That was incredible. That's one of those. I think that's one of those things that you think I'm probably not going to go back to Hawaii that time. That time, that I might not even get back to Hawaii ever. So if we want to do something, let's just do it. So yeah, we did the helicopter over a volcano with the doors off, which is another thing that I'll never forget.
We went to Hawaii for the first time a few months ago.
You did, and you combined it with Alaska, didn't you?
Yeah. It was a dream trip, but we went to Hawaii, and it was wonderful. But my biggest regret, Laura, of both Hawaii and Alaska is I found out we were maybe on the plane home or packing to go. I mean, I found out very, very late in the adventure that my wife was agreeable to going on a helicopter tour excursion.
Right.
And we were kind of like, I wish we had done that. And if I had known in advance, I'd have booked that. I can be a wimp at times, so I wouldn't book that, it's just something I want to do on my own. But if I had known that my wife, I never thought my wife would be up for that. So, but we will definitely incorporate some kind of helicopter excursion. Now that I know that she is cool with it, and I'll just grip her hand real tight. but we won't pay to have the doors taken off.
No, might be a step too far. That. Yeah, you'll love it. I would highly recommend it. Yeah, definitely.
So in Hawaii, I'm a super, super Jurassic Park fan. Mm-hmm. I love that movie. I can quote you every line. People don't like to watch it with me because I just sit here and know every line, every word to all the movie. So I got to take a helicopter ride in Kauai. Oh, wow. that landed on the Jurassic Falls waterfall from the very first scene in the movie where they land at the waterfall. Mm-hmm. And I took that excursion, and I was crying. It was like I was in the movie, and we were wearing headphones for the helicopter, and they were playing the Jurassic Park music in my ears, and it was just like this surreal experience of, I don't know, it was just, I can't even really explain how emotional I got, because it was everything all in one. Mm-hmm. And it was so amazing.
Now, was that your first helicopter tour?
It was, yes. So I was very nervous about that. And then, of course, I had my emotional experience landing.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, when we were flying home, we were just reflecting on the trip. And my wife mentioned that, she would like to go on a helicopter tour, because so many people we were running into were telling us about tours they took either in Hawaii or Alaska on a helicopter. And that's something that never, ever occurred to me that my wife would be interested in doing. And so now, of course, we had already decided we want to go back. That was kind of an easy decision to make. But I'm going to make sure when we go back to Alaska, when we go back, that we do some kind of a helicopter excursion.
You should definitely do it. I recommend it. It was smoother than I thought. I was really nervous that it was going to be like shaky, but it was like gliding through the air so nice and peacefully, and I loved it. I recommend it. You need to do it. Your wife will love it.
More embarrassing and funny. Matt, Royal Caribbean Blog, was on the podcast in June, and he's one of the most influential digital creators in cruising. His embarrassing moment temporarily cut him down to size. In August, we hosted Chef Dennis, the renowned food and travel blogger and social media star, with his deadpan delivery. And Neil from Cruise Ship Diaries returns. I could listen to Neil for hours. In fact, I have. What's your most memorable or funny or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I have embarrassing. I don't mind sharing. I've shared this story before. So, like when I first started blogging, Paul, the blog was not anywhere near where it is today, but certainly I knew people who knew who I was. And I was on a cruise ship, and I'm walking down the Royal Promenade, and when you can see somebody coming towards you, they're coming to you. They're not like walking past you. And I was like, oh, here it comes. Someone's going to recognize me for who I am. And this is it. My moment finally. Someone's going to recognize me. And the guy comes walking to me and goes, sir, your fly is down. And I was so embarrassed because my mind, I had these lofty expectations, and now it's like the bottom of the barrel, like, oh God, how embarrassing. So it was, yeah.
That brought you down to size?
Yes, that a good lesson in humility there.
It could have been worse. He could have said, hey, Matt from the Royal Caribbean blog, your fly is down.
Fly is down. That's true. Maybe he didn't recognize me. Even better. That's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
So I go to this school, and it's an all-girls Catholic high school, and it's an old school. So, the kitchen is not up to date. It's huge, but it's not, the storerooms had these old wooden shelvings in it and plastic. And I'm looking around and going, oh my God, what fresh hell is this? And I'm like, I'm trying, how am I going to tell these nice nuns that, I'm sorry, but I don't want to work here. And the principal goes, and you work 168 days a year. And I went, when would you like me to start? There was no, my mind just heard 168 days. And it was my other parts going, no, you don't want the job. I go, yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And so we start making our way back. And on the way back, we get lost again. And then we see fresh bear shit. And everything that we've been told about bears immediately goes out your head the second you see fresh, giant bear shit. Because you're thinking, right, what bears do they have here? Is it the ones where you're supposed to make lots of noise and let them know you're around? Or is it the ones where you're supposed to be really quiet? And I immediately go, I said, girls, you haven't got any food in your bags, have you? No, we haven't got anything. Okay, good. Right, so I said, but if we can see that, then it can definitely smell and see us. So calmly as we could, we just went really quiet then, we just like really quiet, slowly making our way back as quickly as we can. And eventually we get through the forest bit, and the time is like, we are so late now at this point. And of course, if you're late back to the ship, officially, if you miss the ship in the port, you get fired, you get sent home. You have to make your way at your own expense to the next port of call, and then your bags will be waiting for you and you'll be sent home. And so this is my, first day off? So I'm not really wanting to get fired.
Professor Cruz is a blogger and a humorist I hosted on the podcast in April. I asked her for a funny anecdote, and she delivered. Emma of Emma Cruises, also on in April, had a once-in-a-cruise lifetime story. Incredible. Now, as noted on your website, you have been told that Professor Cruz is the funniest cruise blog on the web. What's your funniest cruise story?
So I will sometimes post satirical articles to my site. So a couple months ago, Carnival had been making these series of cuts to things like dining times and various things that people were kind of upset about. So I wrote a satirical piece about how Carnival was cutting their complimentary coffee to half calf, and then in a related measure would also start charging for the use of public restrooms on the ship. So, I mean, this article.
Now let me interrupt. Did anyone believe this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the next part of the story. So you're laughing, right? I mean, it's so obviously satire. And I said explicitly in the piece toward the end that it was satire. And it was obviously satire. Like, if you had bothered to read the first couple of paragraphs, like, it's obviously satire. But so people just read the headline. And it went viral. I mean, it got shared all over the internet, all over Facebook, Carnival-related Facebook groups, and people were just up in arms over these changes, like up in arms. And the comments were so funny. I mean, people were so mad. And it ended up that John Held, who's the Carnival brand ambassador, had to actually address this on his Facebook page. Like, we're not doing any of these things. And then I had to write a follow-up article, like in big bold letters, Carnival not switching to half calf and not charging for public restrooms.
Get out.
So that was really, really funny.
So was Carnival sore at you? Did John Hill, mention you at all?
I don't think he mentioned me directly. I think he just said, there have been rumors floating around on social media that we're doing this, and we're absolutely not doing it.
My most memorable cruise I took recently is I took a cruise. I was at dinner, and between the starter and the main, they cancelled our cruise.
Get out. Whoa.
So that was memorable. Yes, our cruise lasted 8 hours. Yeah, so it was with a new British cruise line. I was supposed to be doing a Christmas markets cruise just before Christmas, and they had a annual safety check, and it happened on that day when we were boarding. But we'd got on board, we'd done our safety drill, I'd unpacked, we'd gone to dinner, and then bing bong over the announcement system, the captain says, "I'm sorry to tell you, this cruise is cancelled. You have to be off by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning." That's going to be memorable to me because it was crazy. And surprisingly, people were not annoyed. People were just kind of in disbelief. People were laughing. They refunded our drinks packages and everything. So I think everybody just thought, let's just go crazy, have a great evening, and then go back tomorrow.
3 guests who are well-known world travelers shared with me their memories about delicacies in the lands they visited. John of In the Loop Travel from March, Mr. Scott Eddy, who was on the show in July, and Traveling Judy from December. What's the most unique dish you've eaten in the exotic lands you visited?
All right, I've done a street food tour in Cambodia, so that got kind of weird, and we were eating like little frogs and tarantulas on a stick and things like that, scorpions. So that was probably the most exotic dishes I've had.
All righty then, frogs and tarantulas on a stick. I hope to emulate your traveling experience, but I won't be emulating your willingness to try. So, what's the most? You say you try local food. Anything? What's the most? What's the right word? Adventurous.
The most adventurous that I've ever got with food is when I lived in Bangkok. We went to a Nigerian restaurant in Bangkok, and I tried to eat monkey brains.
Okay, all righty. As they say, all righty then. I look at you, Scott, as a travel role model, but that's one behavior I will not be following. So, monkey brains, okay. What's the most I don't know, exotic that you've tried?
Well, the most I'll give you the most recent one on Miyakojima Island. I was at a teppanyaki.
Now, forgive me, I cut geography class that day. Where is that?
Miyakojima is one of the islands off of Japan.
Okay.
And they brought out all of we ordered the set menu. We didn't know what was on it. We asked what they recommend, and they said, we recommend the set menu. We ordered the set menu, and they brought out all of these amazing things. And one of the things was a big shell that had something moving inside of it.
Oh, my goodness.
And he showed it to us. It was just about sick. He showed it to us. I videoed it. I had a little bit of fun. And then he put it on the grill, on the teppanyaki grill. And we watched this thing get cooked from squirming around in its shell to not squirming anymore. Then he scooped it all out, put it back on the grill a little bit, sliced it all out, and he presented it. And my husband and I looked at each other, and I am pretty squeamish, but I tasted it. It was called abalone.
Oh, I've heard of that. Okay.
Yeah. So it was abalone. It was the way it was prepared, from live, moving around, to being on my plate. I absolutely loved it. Loved it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But we've eaten everything. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. In China, I've had some pretty horrible delicacies. I was early on in China. I was at a table where they serve monkey brains.
I actually have had another guest who I asked this question to to those travelers who have a tendency to go to exotic places. Guests often share a wonderful memory relating to or from the perspective of their child or parent. Brian of DCL Duo on the podcast in May told a wonderful story about the magic of Disney as experienced by his son Nathan. Scott and Tom of Vitamin C UK emotionally mentioned a parent, and then they go on to talk about how they've embarrassed themselves. Roland from Roland and Emma briefly talked about the time his dad cruised with him. That brought up a lot of feelings for me. My dad passed before I started writing about cruising, and I still wistfully fantasize about what it would have been like to cruise with him.
I'll say my most memorable experience, and the thing that really just landed the Disney cruising obsession for me, we did a Star Wars day at sea sailing on the Disney Fantasy in probably, I don't know if it was 2018 or 2019, but it was our son's, I think, first full cruising, like 7-night cruising experience on Disney Cruise Line. We had taken him on a small test cruise just to see how he'd do when he was younger. But anyway, as a part of the Star Wars day at sea sailing, they had these special character meetups that you had to get tickets for. And the tickets were free, just they were a way to control the crowds. But one of the meetups was with Chewbacca. And so we showed up and we were at the rear of the line because we had come late. And so we had a lot of time standing in line, sort of staring at Chewbacca. And at one point, as we're getting closer, our son stopped and said, "Mommy, Daddy, Chewbacca is real." And I was like, I looked at him, he's like, his eyes are blinking and there's no one that tall. And he walked up thinking Wookiees are real. I'm meeting one, and he just got this. We have this picture. I can't find it, but I swear we have this picture where Chewbacca is hugging him, and you can barely see him because he's covered by Wookiee. And so that experience just stands out in my mind, as does we immediately left there to go to meet C-3PO and R2-D2. And since this isn't the normal Disney cruising audience, I'll just say if you don't want your kids to have the magic spoiled, just, fast forward 30 seconds here. But they have someone standing in the restaurant kind of out of the way controlling R2-D2. Well, our son didn't pick up on that. They're kind of have their hands in a bag and it just looks like they're leaning up against a wall. But he walks up and he goes, "There's no way these droids aren't real. No one's that small to fit in that costume." And so he firmly believed for a while that these things were real. And to have that level of magic happen, that your kids think this isn't just someone in a suit, it's a real thing happening on board, like that is 100% the story I would tell people as to why we sailed Disney Cruise Line. Like, that is the level of magic, entertainment, and experience they are giving. Our son thought these things were real.
That's a wonderful story.
One of the most memorable ones was getting on board with Mum, and we all got emotional because she's never cruised before. So that for me they'll always stick in my mind, and even when I talk about it, I get welled up. There wasn't the best funny times and embarrassing time at the same time is the silent disco on cruise ships. It's when we've got our headphones on. We dance like no one's watching. On board with anyone.
Or listening.
Shoes come off and he goes in his own world. And he's like Florence and the Machine where he's doing all these little... Kate Bush. So he's doing that. He's dancing and I'm singing off the top of my voice. And then the next day when someone comes up to you and go, "Look, guys, this was you last night." And we're like...
the videos.
And we'd always get people coming up to us and going, "Hey guys, great dance last night."
No, actually, the best one was when we were on Norwegian, and I can't remember what the cruise director was doing or something. And then we managed to start a hokey cokey.
Oh, he was doing the hokey cokey, and we went, "We don't do hokey cokey." And we got in the middle, we started dancing, and all of a sudden, everyone stopped the hokey cokey
and started dancing
with us. And the cruise director was like, "It's our show, not yours." So I think that might be embarrassing for us the next day.
Yeah.
Now, the other one would be the only cruise that my dad ever took is when we did our first family cruise. Now, the only time because he's not into that, but we got him to go. And he passed away 3 years ago, so he can't go on anymore. But he did get that one. And I got a good picture of her and him on the deck, just sitting, chilling, and talking.
Sometimes a wonderful memory is in the context of meeting celebrities or famous people. A candidate for most moving memory had to be an episode called Mother's Day from June when a daughter, Stephanie, and mom, Marinita, were guests on the Today Show. Invited because Stephanie had written a touching letter about her mom in response to a Today Show promotion. It was wonderful to be invited on the show. And then Carson Daly and Al Roker showed up. For Ken Byrne, the singing maitre d' who was on the show in August, it was Dame Judi Dench. And for Dana Freeman Travels on the show in March, it was U2's Bono. What a cool twist at the end.
So exactly that, Paul. We went on set. The experience to me was the prize. And even seeing the personalities, we had a lovely breakfast, and there were 19 other mother-daughter couples on the plaza. So there were 40 people altogether. And they were interviewing different couples throughout the morning and highlighting their story. And so they get to one mother-daughter couple. So the mom was going to be a new grandma and the daughter is going to be a new mom, and they're interviewing them. And shortly thereafter, Al Roker and Carson Daly come out with sailor hats and this luggage they're pulling. And my mom and I are like, isn't that so nice? We're thinking they're going to give the new mom and new grandma some trip somewhere, and they're about to announce it. And they actually announced that all the moms on the plaza have won a trip to Alaska. And we were just kind of stunned, wait a minute, what just happened? Right, Mom? We were just kind of did you, we were did you just win a trip to Alaska? It was really unbelievable.
It was really a surprise.
I'll bet. Yeah. I'll bet. That just sounds amazing.
Memorable. I'd have to say the Carnival Legends startup was with Dame Judi Dench. That was a lovely time. I was also, because our maiden voyage, we actually visited Ireland, and I was able to bring my late father and mother on to visit the ships. So that was very memorable for me, very special.
Wow.
Funny moments, yeah, there's quite a few. There's one when the waiter spilled a bottle of red wine over a bride all over her dress, and I took it out to have it laundered in naphtha, and it came back pink. Yeah, and that cost a few dollars. And then there was another one when another waiter tripped me into the dining room while it was Oriental dinner, and he had to lift a tray over a table of 10, and all the food went into the center of the table.
Oh my goodness!
So that was a stir fry. Trust me.
I recall you told me the story in the book about the wedding dress, and it wasn't even your fault, right?
Wasn't my fault. No. I just watched it in slow motion roll along the table as it spilled on her beautiful dress.
Well, and you told me they're still married, so
they're still married. Thank God.
To that end, I have 3 tattoos. All are U2 related. My favorite one is the one that Bono drew on my arm.
Now, I have to ask you to elaborate on that a little bit.
My husband and I are huge U2 fans, and obviously we've seen them so many times all over the world. I met Bono when he was practicing in Laval outside of Montreal before a concert or before a tour started, and there were really only about 100 fans there, and I met him and shook his hand and was talking to him, and he was signing autographs, and I said, can you sign my arm instead? And he drew a part of a collada ring, which is the heart and the crown and normally the hands around it. He didn't do the hands. Instead, he put a little B for his signature, and my husband and I had it tattooed on our arm.
Similarly, most memorable is often talked about in terms of a location. Who can top Peter Antonucci's recollection of Antarctica? Peter, author of the Billionaires at Sea series, which was influenced by Peter's time living on board the world super yacht, which he discusses on the podcast in December. Steve Creasy of DCL Podcast's favorite, most beautiful place was Geiranger Fjord in Norway. Steve was in my second cruise book, Cruising Interrupted. I was so enthralled by his description of Geiranger in the book that I put it on my bucket list. That was several years ago. Now we are booked. Yet another description of a place was so stunning that I also put it on my bucket list. It was by Jason Venner, a former cruise director for Holland America Line and now a theme cruise host and performer. The place was Santorini, and it too is now booked. What's the most unforgettable place ever visited?
You know, if I said anything other than Antarctica, I would have to be lying. Antarctica is a very, very special place. I've been there many times. I've gone down through from Ushuaia in the southernmost part of Argentina, through the Drake Passage. I've gone there through from New Zealand. I've gone through the Weddell Sea, the Ross Ice Shelf. That's where we set a Guinness World Record for being the southernmost vessel in the history of the planet. You know, and been from Antarctica to Australia. So I've seen. I won't say I've seen a lot of Antarctica. Antarctica is massive, but I've been there many times and seen it, and it's just glorious, just glorious. So that's, I'd say, the best, the most unforgettable. Going to what I call uncivilized places in Borneo and the Solomon Islands, or one of my favorite places there was a place called Tikopia, where we saw they have javelin fights, and whoever loses eats the other person's waist. I mean, really primitive. They had never seen cell phones. They had never seen, the little kids had never seen ice. We put ice in kids' hands, and they were giggling, and the smiles we saw were amazing. And when we went to these, you know, I'm calling them uncivilized islands, we would bring soccer balls or crayons or things like that and give to the kids, and they loved it. But you know, safaris were great. Sometimes we would get off the ship and then just hire a plane and go somewhere else in the country. Like the Taj Mahal is not, you don't go to port in Agra in India. So we would jump off somewhere else in India, get a plane and jet up there and do that. Same thing when we would go through went down to the Panama Canal a few times, and we jumped off it and took a plane to the Galapagos. And did stuff like that.
Wow. I'll tell you, as you talk about certainly Antarctica and Galapagos, I think I'll pass on Borneo, or places where they had to eat waste. But you know, all of those places are on my bucket list.
Geiranger, which is a World Heritage Site, and I'm really excited you're going to be able to go there. What made it memorable was being able to. We went to a farm, and what they did was the adults got to go and try some beer, because that's how he made money now, was brewing beer. But it was originally a sheep farm, so we got to go do that. And then, the kids got to go with the wife, and she collected these old stamps. These big, they're kind of metal imprints, and the kids got to pick out the metal imprint that they wanted, and they took that stamp and they put it on a pillow case, and it was a really nice pillow case, and they brought it home, and they still have it on their bed today. So when I look back on that cruise of being in Norway, and just one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, standing on the steps of that farm and looking out over the fjord, and then it brings me back to just, you know, spending time with the family. And I see it every time when I walk into my kids' rooms now with the pillows that they have on the bed with the stamp. So
embarrassing could go on forever, because I've embarrassed myself millions of times. But it's too much. One of my most memorable experiences, and it just popped into my head, funny enough, is if you've ever done the Mediterranean and you've done Santorini. So Santorini, and I know I'm sure you've
I've done the Med,
you've done
but
it, right,
not
Paul?
Santorini.
Okay, yeah. So for you as well. So Santorini is an ancient volcano, and you know, think of the crater and the whole 9 yards, and huge. And when I say huge, I mean you could fit dozens and dozens of massive cruise ships in the crater. It's that big. And what happened is, over time, the walls broke down on two portions. So if you're looking at, you know, if we're looking down on a crater of a volcano, it's opened up here and here, if that makes sense. So water can pass through it. So it's a semicircle, and a semicircle. And that's the top, that's the rim of the volcano. So as a cruise ship, you pull through the opening into the actual volcano. And then Santorini is up the straight vertical side of the wall of the volcano around the rim on one side. And there's Ia as kind of a connection to Santorini as the other little town. And it is the most picturesque, beautiful, stunning. When you think of a Greek island, a Greek villa, a Greek villa, you think of the white with the blue roof, and it's the quintessential Greek town, Greek island. And I was fortunate. When I was about 25, I got ordained as a Universal Life Church minister, a non-religious but legal, able to legally marry people, because cruise ships I'd get asked all the time. And so I got confirmed, and I registered and did the whole thing. And I actually conducted a ceremony on the bow of the ship with the walls and Santorini behind us. And it was just stunning. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever been a part of.
Rather than the typical most embarrassing, funniest, most memorable questions, I was so fascinated by Peter Antonucci's time aboard the World, I decided to ask him a series of questions, rapid fire style. Here's a couple. And forgive me on some of these questions. I've polled my listeners, and these are things they want to hear. And all my listeners are saying, no, he didn't. Let's see. Ever see any pirates?
Absolutely. Yep.
Get out. Whoa, tell me more.
West coast of Africa, but much more on the east coast of Africa. We took when we left certain countries. You're limited to how many guns you can carry on the ship and what caliber and stuff like that. But when we left certain countries, we would have a team of mercenaries. I call them mercenaries. A team of soldiers meet us. I don't know how many miles offshore it was, and they would come on and sail with us for X amount of weeks when we were in very dangerous parts of the world, the Suez Canal, or where the Houthi rebels have been very active in the last few weeks, blowing up things. When we would sail through there, we had these people with these weapons, which were more than just firearms. They were greater than that. Let's put it that way.
At least one of the photos looked to me like a well-equipped commando. So was he one of those people you picked up, or was he someone who traveled with the ship all the time?
No, I saw that picture. He's somebody who came on board from time to time. He and his team, snipers, sharpshooters. Yep. There was one murder we saw that was not on the ship, but on the dock. It was I can't even tell you what country it was, but somebody. The rumor was it was a drug deal gone bad, and somebody dove into the water, and another guy just stood there and assumed the position with his Glock and fired the whole round and the whole.
Oh my goodness!
Into the water and killed the guy. So look, you go to enough places, you see enough things.
Who is the most what's the right word? Googleable or Instagrammable or whatever. Who's the most notable resident, without naming them, that you ever encountered?
Oh, I'm not naming, and it's tough to do without naming. But we did have at least one person who was referred to as Your Excellency.
Oh wow!
we had one person who is, and I don't want to give it away, but one of the top 3 paid television personalities of all times.
Wow. Please don't judge me, as these last 2 sound bites are just a little risque. Well, they involve women and views of them that they would not have otherwise chosen. They are hilarious. For the first, we get to hear from Joanna Nell again, the best-selling former cruise ship doctor. And finally, Steph of Sean and Steph, who was just on the show. And it's my choice as winner of the most embarrassing cruise memory. The evacuation in the middle of the Panama Canal. That sounded like quite a story.
Yeah, of course, medical emergencies have no respect for geography or logistics. And there'd been a passenger who'd had a stroke. It was quite a severe one, and she needed to be landed to a hospital ashore. And the ship was going through the Panama Canal, and it really is a very tricky place to get somebody off a ship. But it had to be done. And so we'd coordinated for an ambulance to be waiting. And so we had to wait for the ship to rise in the canal in one of the locks until the gunport door, which is where you sort of enter and exit the ship, was level with the dock side. We quickly put out a gangway, stretchered the patient off, and popped her into the back of the ambulance. But I have to say, in those days, it really wasn't a very fancy ambulance. I didn't like the look of it. There was nothing to stop the stretcher, banging against the back doors. And I worried that if they were accelerating, that she might end up out of the back door. So I climbed into the back with her, and she was quite anxious. So I sort of held her hand, and we went in a quite sort of bumpy, rickety ambulance back over to Panama City, where thankfully the hospital was really lovely and modern, and I was very confident to leave her there in very safe hands. But then I was stuck in the middle of Panama City, and the ship had gone. It had left. It wasn't going to stop just for one crew member. So it had already sailed off and into the open water. And I was left down at the dockside in Panama City. And this is a place you don't want to be as a young woman in a white uniform, carrying a bag full of what is essentially sort of medical drugs, medical heroin, etc. It was getting dark. And the pilot boat was going out just to collect the pilot who would have navigated the ship out and into open water. And they said, right, hop on. So I hopped onto the pilot boat and hung on. And this pilot boat shot out at full speed to catch up with the ship, by which stage it was sort of quite, it was accelerating out into open water. And I thought, how am I going to get from this pilot boat up to the ship? And suddenly this rope ladder, I think they call it a Jacob's ladder, it just flew over the side and down. And the ship didn't stop. And the pilot, I don't know how many knots we were going. And they said, well, you've just got to climb up. So I got and in those days, the uniform was quite tight. So I had this sort of quite tight white skirt on, totally inappropriate shoes, and a bag full of heroin. And I somehow had to get back up to the ship. So I just thought there's nothing for it. I just had to hoik my skirt up, not look down, and just hope for the best. And so I climbed up there. And what I didn't realize was that there were people all around the deck watching, filming me. And when I got back on, there was this big cheer and a round of applause for having scaled up, which was essentially that at the side of I don't know how many story building. So that was quite an adventure.
What's your most wonderful or memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
So I think that Sean would probably agree with this. It's probably the funniest. And I guess it could be embarrassing. I wasn't embarrassed because I'm a clumsy person. We were on the Disney Magic, and we just finished dinner at Lumiere's, which is kind of their big main dining room. And they have stairs that are leaving the restaurant. Well, I was recording at the time and did not know that there were stairs, and I completely fell up the stairs and onto my face. The best part about it was that in the camera footage, it doesn't even look like I fell. And Sean just laughed about that so much, but I was wearing a dress, and the dress was over my head.
Wow.
So the entire restaurant got a nice shot of my backside without a dress on. Yes.
All righty then.
I'm a clumsy person.
Sometimes when I ask that question and people tell me I've heard all kind of stories. I like to come back with a saying that's common on social media: photos or it didn't happen.
That's right.
In your case, I'm going to move on. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, the Joy of Cruising podcast guests, for a great first year. Here's to a wonderful second year. I will see you on the ocean.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.